Hello, welcome to our first video in part B of Light for the Path. It's a series of videos that will talk about life from a more spiritual perspective. We'll begin by saying, with introduction to part 2, which is the part B we're talking about. I will now ask you this. Have you ever paused to ponder about what the answers might be to some of life's age-old questions? What's the purpose of this life? In other words, why are we here? Where do we come from? Where do we go? These are only a few of the very important questions for which humanity has sought answers since the early days of our existence. Perhaps we may now shine a little bit of light into this previously dark corner of our lives here on this planet, even our existence here. You might ask, what do these videos have to offer the seeker? I will first respond by stating that perhaps answers can be provided to one degree or another to those three questions posed above, especially about the question about the purpose of our lives here. Equally important is that I will also respond by saying that you will find over time that there's a great deal more to be found within yourself than these videos or any book or person outside yourself can ever provide. However, that having been said, depending upon where you are along the path of life, you may find in the words given here information, suggestions, and ideas that could really be very helpful to you over a period of time in the process of finding that which is within yourself, and help you also to establish a level of ongoing communication, perhaps between you and higher unseen positive forces, with special emphasis on your own inner higher self. The establishment of that communication, no matter how long it takes or how much patience and perseverance are required, should be a goal for every serious seeker. Once that communication is dependably established, you'll no longer need to depend on books or on videos or on someone like me or others who hope to assist you in seeking and obtaining guidance from higher positive forces. I believe that there's enough information in these videos to guide seekers such as you, if you have patience and a sincere heart, so that hopefully you'll be able to establish communication with your own higher self, and if needed with other higher unseen positive forces. This is especially true of those of you who are willing to follow the enjoyable pursuit of reading from the book list and trying your best to follow the suggestions in that video and in other videos in this series, especially when you feel that those suggestions may strike an inner chord within yourself. There are a number of important reasons why I put the information that is here into this series of videos. A significant portion of the information, in one form or another, has been available for many centuries, passed from teacher to student or from parents to their children. It's also been taught for many centuries in various places that are often called mystery schools, and I include there the Rosicrucian Order, AMORC, or AMORC. And the information has also been available from certain books and other sources. In the past, much of this knowledge has been somewhat esoteric or hidden in its nature, and has therefore been rather restricted in its access. In addition, it's also true that only a few seekers were likely to be drawn to it with sufficient interest to look into it, or to study it to any significant degree. More recently, however, a great many more people have become interested in matters that are mystical, spiritual, or generally esoteric in their nature. Partly as a result of that great increase in interest, and also because of the fact that our world changed dramatically on September 11th, 2001, and again as a result of the worldwide financial crisis of 2008, as well as for numerous other reasons. The time has now come when such knowledge needs to be made more easily accessible to those persons who are finding themselves becoming more and more interested in such knowledge. Some of the information that's been somewhat hidden now needs to begin to be brought more into the light of day. In addition, significant events have already begun to take place on the earth, and there are those who need to be made aware that many of these events, including the events of September the 11th, 2001, and the financial crisis of 2008, were not isolated events. They were among the beginning of many significant changes that are not yet complete and that will continue to take place over the coming years. This information is being provided to help people who are interested understand these events and be better prepared to understand and survive what is still ahead. It's true also that some of the information that's here may not be currently available to you from any other source. Because of those facts, and since the information now needs to be made available, and these videos seem to be one of the most reasonable ways to accomplish that task, I've taken the steps to put the information here for those who are interested and who want to know. I hope that you'll come to consider this series of videos as one of your favorite places to visit again and again. There's much more being offered here than that which first meets the eye. May I also say, however, before you begin, that even though while watching these videos you may encounter certain names, events, or periods of time that no longer seem to be current or relevant, I would, nevertheless, encourage you to continue to watch with an open mind and heart, because the concepts, principles, and ideas put forth herein that are the heart and soul of these videos are both ageless and timeless, and they will continue to have a great deal to offer the seeker, or even the inquiring viewer, for some time to come. Despite the fact that certain persons, events, or situations may no longer seem pertinent or relevant in your current day and time. Now that you've reviewed the information in the introduction, we can talk more about the nature of the phenomenon that we call life. In order to properly answer those three questions mentioned in the introduction, those were why are we here, where do we come from, and where do we go, there's a good deal of information that you'll need in order to have the greatest understanding possible of that which you will be given. We'll begin in this first video to lay a foundation upon which we will then build in subsequent videos, until you not only have the above questions answered to one degree or another, but you'll also have a much more complete understanding of how that information and other information which we will provide comes together to give you a much more complete understanding of our world, of higher realms, and how all of this relates to you and to those around you. Perhaps before we're done, we can shine even more light into those sometimes dark corners of our lives here on this earth. There's a commonality in all of life. We tend to think of life mostly in terms of ourselves and those close to us and around us. We may not always take the time to consider the fact that life, as it relates to our planet, is basically everywhere. Regardless of whether you look at the air, the water, or the land on this world of ours, the planet, so far at least, is actually teeming with life. If we'll stop plundering and polluting it for no greater purpose than to satisfy the greed of those who are unwilling to set aside the small portion of funds necessary to do business in a way that is not harmful to our planet, then it will very likely continue to be teeming with life of all kinds for a very long time to come. However, the trend is not going in that direction currently. Here's something that you may or may not have considered before. All of life shares something in common, and we're all interconnected as a result of that. Some may be thinking that this refers to the food chain, and that also is a very important aspect of this truth to keep in mind. The even more significant point that's being made here, however, is that every entity that has within it that which we call life is connected by that which we share, by that commonality, to every other entity that also has life within it. As a means of explaining that last statement, envision every such entity as some sort of electrical device. For example, you could consider us all such entities as different types and sizes of electric lamps or lights. Envision further that they're all interconnected, as if by wires capable of conducting electric current. And they're connected, each one, to all the others. There is a source of power from which all the lamps, so to speak, receive the so-called spark necessary to allow each to express its light, so to speak, that being life. That source of power is the supreme being in the universe, whom, by one name or another, most of us acknowledge as God. The power emanating from that source is our commonality, that which we all share, that which interconnects us, each one, to all the others, as is so vividly portrayed, along with many other important concepts, in the film Avatar. This truth does not necessarily have anything to do with religion, although many may think that it should. It doesn't have anything to do with church or personal belief of any kind. It simply is a fact. Those who choose to believe it are welcome to do so, and those who choose to believe otherwise are equally welcome to do so. The point is, however, that since all of life comes from the same source, should we not be more considerate of and caring about others, including our fellow human beings, as well as other forms of life, even when they're not just like ourselves? This doesn't mean that we should begin tiptoeing around blades of grass for fear that we might step on one. It does mean, however, what it says. Perhaps you'll take the time to give it some serious thought. You may find that the implications are more far-reaching than you might have first considered. Let's now ask the question, what is life really? This is the question that's been asked countless times and in countless ways ever since humankind has had the mental capacity to concern itself with such matters. It would appear, however, that many of us, from the time that we come here until we are 30 or 40 years of age, do not tend to concern ourselves with many of these age-old questions of life. On the other hand, when many of us become closer to 50 or 60 years of age and begin to approach a time in our lives which, for many of us, are the sunset years of our time here, we more often find ourselves reflecting upon the life that we have lived. We may wonder what we've accomplished in this life. There are some people who consider even further, wondering why we come here to this life and what purpose, if any, there is to this period of existence that we call life. Is life an illusion, or a dream, or a state of mind, or perhaps even a state of consciousness? With a little thought, we hope to now shed some light on this most interesting phenomenon called life. Perhaps it should be stated at this time, however, that even if the information and ideas here do not agree with your own thinking on this subject, it's nevertheless hoped that you will find the information here to be both interesting and worthwhile. Let me say that be it known that God, by whatever name you may know him, is the source of all things. From that source we have come, which means that the so-called fall of man took place when we dropped or fell from a higher level or frequency of existence to the lower frequencies of the material or physical world of existence. In order to learn and master the lessons that this life has to offer, and thereby to grow and develop spiritually to the point when we will finally be able to return to him in a state significantly more perfect and more worthy than when we departed. We're constantly working at one level of our existence or another in preparation to return to that source in that more perfected state just described. What is described here encompasses a portion of that preparatory work. Before coming to this physical earth plane, we exist in a place that is often called the other side. It is, in actuality, a plane of existence that is made up of a range of vibratory frequencies that are too high for our 5 physical senses to realize, and we are normally, therefore, unaware of it on a conscious level. Conversely, however, we are aware from that higher level of existence of the range of vibratory frequencies that can be realized by our 5 physical senses, meaning sound, physical light, etc. Just as we're unable in a single incarnation to learn all of the lessons that life in this material world has to offer, neither can the lessons or the knowledge needed to advance in our higher existence be learned all at once. We do the work there on that higher non-physical level of existence, that which we are able to do, and then when we're ready, we make the decision to advance to the next higher level. We then work there at that higher level to prepare ourselves for advancement to an even higher level of existence and work, which then prepares us for a yet higher level, and so on. Before we move on to each higher level there, we must decide whether or not we have fully prepared ourselves to take that step. Because if we do take it, and at the next higher level make an error, the higher the level, the more serious are the consequences of making such an error. We must therefore decide whether we are fully prepared to advance to that next level, or whether we need additional preparation that could require us to reincarnate once again on this physical plane. In many such cases, the decision is made to reincarnate on the physical earth plane. Although there are obviously many exceptions, this generally tends to be a cycle of approximately 140 years, about 70 of which are spent on the physical plane with a similar amount of time on the higher plane. The time involved in each location can obviously vary, depending on the needs of the personality involved. Once the decision is made that additional lessons are needed in this world on the material plane, we must then choose other entities to be our mother and our father on this physical plane, and appropriate agreements and arrangements must be made with them. I'm talking about with them at a higher level. Then, once they've been born onto the earth plane and the necessary years have passed to allow them to grow up and come together as adults, when the time does come that the mother's pregnancy is at hand, if that embryo to be is the one which will have the body that we are to inhabit, then we at a higher level of existence become involved in helping to create the body that has been chosen for the life experiences that are needed. In fact, even earlier than that, even to the point of choosing the RNA and DNA for that embryo to be. We also make many other decisions about the formation of the body, into which we will later enter and reside here at the first breath of birth. These decisions are based upon the knowledge that we possess at that higher level regarding the lessons that we need on the earth plane. For example, we may have in past incarnations been uncaring or unfeeling or without compassion or even cruel to some particular individual or to some segment of the population, such as people of color or people of low economic status or people who have been challenged with mental and or physical difficulties. If so, we may decide at that higher level, the spirit level, that there is a need for us in that body which will be ours to have the same life experiences while in this new body that we have approached and dealt with incorrectly in the past when dealing with others. The parents that we choose and the life circumstances that will likely be surrounding the family unit are chosen from that higher level of existence, with all of these things being considered. This then allows us to have the opportunity to learn by, quote, walking in the other person's shoes, end quote, during this lifetime on the physical plane. We may therefore choose, and I say we at that higher spirit level, make the choice to create and live in a body of color perhaps, or to be a person in poverty, or a person who is mentally and or physically challenged. It's generally with knowledge of these things that the higher self chooses, reaches agreements, and makes arrangements with those who will be the parents. Sadly, there are people even today who have yet learned so little of the lessons of compassion and love that they will read the statements immediately preceding this, or listen to the statements immediately preceding this, and conclude that anyone whom they see in difficulty is there only because that's where they deserve to be and have chosen to be, and therefore why bother to feel compassion or to try to help them, or even to care? To draw such conclusions would be very unwise indeed. Such an attitude is a reflection of the fact that there are important lessons not yet learned, and is certain to bring negative karmic repercussions. Equally certain to bring negative karmic repercussions, however, is the incorrect idea that we should meddle in the lives and decisions of others without their knowledge or consent, or worse yet, perhaps even against their will. Such matters as these are very delicate in their nature, and they must be considered carefully. Getting back to the subject at hand, however, we do make these decisions about this body, therefore, and the decision-making process continues at that same higher spirit level up to the time of birth and beyond, continuing on throughout life, as we will discuss below. I believe now, however, that this would be a good time to digress briefly and make a point of saying that at the time of birth, when the first breath enters the body of the newborn, the spirit of the entity that is to occupy that body enters with that first breath. The Judeo-Christian Bible tells us that it is at that time that the child becomes a living soul. That is in Genesis 2:7. It says, "And the Lord formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." End quote. That happens when the spirit containing the spark of life, meaning the life force, that's a part of the spark of God that lives within each of us, enters the body with that first breath. It is that spirit containing that spark of life, the life force, that constitutes what determines that the child or person is alive. Without that, the child has not begun life on its own. A person of any age without that spark or life force, once the spirit permanently leaves, ceases to have life in this physical material existence. Until the time that the person's spirit, bringing with it the spark of life, enters with the first breath, the life in the embryo is an extension of the life of the mother. Now, I know that there are many who are considered to be of high authority who will disagree with this because they believe that independent life begins at conception. But Genesis is very clear on this point. Life begins with the first breath, when the spirit comes into the child. These statements should not be wrongly interpreted as an endorsement of the practice of what has come to be called abortion. That is a separate subject with its own very significant karmic considerations, and we'll not be discussing it further here because that subject was covered adequately in part 1 of this series of videos. Part A, actually. Let us now return to the task of explaining what transpires after the birth. After that time, decisions are made and guidance is given by that higher aspect of ourselves that is often called the higher self. A subtle nudge here, an idea there that seems to be our own. These things continue throughout our lives as the higher self guides us as needed, generally without our conscious knowledge, so that we will at least have the opportunity to correctly make decisions that we have made incorrectly in times or even incarnations past. In other words, we can rest assured that the higher self will inevitably guide us to the life experiences and decision-making opportunities that we need, and that are the reasons why we come here. The decisions that we make at a conscious level at those times, however, are up to us. Because at the conscious level, as well as at the higher level, we are all agents of free will. We do have free will. If you've carefully read what you've been, if you've carefully listened, to what has been given to you here, you should come to a very important conclusion, that this life is not an accidental happening, and that nothing in it is accidental. Let it be made clear, however, that the previous statement does not mean that we should spend all of our time, or even a significant portion of our time, minutely analyzing various aspects of every one of life's events. If that were done, we would have no time for anything else, and we would not get much actual living accomplished. This life is meant to be lived. That should be equated to the idea that we should live it up every day, however. But it should be lived so that we can experience and benefit from the life experiences that we encounter each day, live and benefit and learn from those life experiences. Knowing, however, that life is not an accident can allow us to realize that there may be from time to time events that are significant enough that we would be wise to pray for guidance in order to approach and deal with them carefully and properly, and to learn from them any needed lessons. Use this knowledge wisely, therefore, as you travel on your journey through this life. I want to thank you for watching. I encourage you to continue with the next and with subsequent videos as your time and inclination allow. We have quite a few videos in this series of Part B of Life for the Path. Thank you very much. And again, thanks for watching.